Okay, now that there are a few more people in here, I'm gonna explain where I've been, what I've been up to, and just what's going on with me today. I had originally planned on going live today in general because my brain has been doing a lot better recently, which that's the biggest part of the reason why I have been away. I wasn't doing super great in terms of my mental health at like the beginning of the summer. I know a lot of y'all know that I quit my day job as an appliance repair tech in January so that I could do this full time, so that I could actually like educate on appliance care and maintenance. And that's way more my passion than actually like being in the houses doing the appliance repair. I really enjoy helping people understand the appliances that they use in their homes like every day. So, and I'm still very passionate about that, genuinely. What's been going on the last few months, though, was at the beginning of summer, I was just not in a good mental headspace, and I realized that I was putting all of my energy into content, which on the one hand sounds good, but it's my job. So I was putting all of my energy into my job, and I didn't have another outlet. Not one that like I felt like dedicating a lot of time to, at least. So that was when I started roller skating. I started roller skating, and I have wanted to learn how to roller skate my entire life, basically. I've always wanted to learn how to do it, but I was never in a position in my life where I could afford to potentially be injured. I was living paycheck to paycheck, and every job that I had, if I was to get injured, I wouldn't be able to work. So I didn't learn how to roller skate because it was just too much of a risk for me. I couldn't take that risk financially in general, but always wanted to learn how to do it. And since I quit the day job and content creation is full-time now, I actually had the time to start learning how to roller skate, and I watched a ton of YouTube tutorials and like learned how to do it very safely. I have, full safety gear especially whenever I'm outside, but I have full safety gear, and I made sure that I knew how to, I learned how to fall correctly before I ever started skating. But point being is I've fallen in love with roller skating, and it's been great. But while I've been roller skating, I've also been trying to be very mindful of my mental health, because I knew that I was kind of reaching a burnout point, and I needed to just kind of step back and breathe and find something just for me and just for my own joy and my own happiness, because I was getting into a headspace where every single day I could think of nothing but the state of the world. And it was not good. It's really not good. And I'm sure a lot of y'all have noticed that over the last few months or so, a lot of the internet has gotten really mean, especially if you're a content creator. A lot of the internet has gotten really mean. And I'm not saying that about everybody, obviously, but it's been challenging to not be in a good headspace and also be present on social media. So what eventually wound up happening is I kind of inadvertently, not even really consciously, taking a step back from social media a little bit and started focusing on my own joy and my own happiness. And I'm still working on it. It's an ongoing process for sure, but I'm definitely in a much better headspace than I used to be. And what wound up happening over the last few years, especially with the pandemic and everything else that's gone on, I've had so many traumatic things happen to me in the last few lives. Hi, Dave. I've had a lot of just lots of trauma in the last few years. And some of y'all have been following along for every little bit of that, and you know all the shit that's happened to me. I finally feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm starting to feel happy again, and that's like really happy, like joy. So I've been working on that just internally, and today I was just you know what, I've been isolating myself for so long. I haven't even realized how much I've been isolating myself. I only talk to 3 people ever, and that's not even every day, and one of them lives with me. So I've been, without even realizing it, kind of isolating and pulling away from people, and because of that, I don't have a whole lot of close friends right now. So it's just been really difficult trying to be social again after getting into the habit of being self-isolated for so long. like my anxiety has gotten a lot better, but my social anxiety is still a challenge. So, like, I made a post about how yesterday I was really stoked that I went to the roller skating rink by myself, and one person came up and talked to me, and I talked back for, like, a minute or two. So, like, that was a very big improvement for me, and this is, like, I'm an introverted person in general, but, like, I've always been very outgoing. I'm an outgoing introvert. So, I've always, like, in the past, made friends really easily, and that was like when I was in high school, when I was going to school, and it was a lot easier. I was seeing a lot more people. And now that I've kind of like isolated from so many people, and I've backed away from so many people, and I'm an adult and I'm not seeing these people all the time, like trying to be a more social person again it's like having to relearn how to make friends. And like I've heard people my age talk about that in the past. So I mean, I understand that as an adult it's harder to make friends and stuff like that, but like it's just difficult for me because I used to be so social and now I kind of am not. So anyhow, that's how I've been. The last few months have been a lot. I know that I haven't been as present on social media, and I know it's been like a really long time since I've been live, or since I like went live regularly. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, like when my mental health is not good, you're not going to see me on social media. And that's the truth. That's how I try to regulate my mental health, and it does work. Sometimes it just takes some time. I have so many ideas and like so many projects that I want to work on. It's just always so difficult with ADHD and everything, but one of the biggest things that has helped me recently was cleaning my room. It's still not perfect. It's like, I got the fan over there. This area is just chaos. But like, I can see my floor. For anyone who's not aware, I have ADHD and anxiety and depression. I have generalized anxiety disorder. You keep washers in your bedroom. I keep the backdrop that has washers on it in my bedroom. You can see the backdrop stand, and you can see the clamps at the top where it's holding it. That's just a big piece of fabric. But yeah, I've got a lot of different mental things going on that I'm usually pretty open about. I haven't talked about a lot of it in a while because I just haven't been in a great headspace to be able to talk about it. But my entire life, organization has been such a struggle for me. It's not even like, it's not like I'm a hoarder and it's like dirty or anything like that. It's just clutter. It's cluttered that an organization that I struggle with, and I have a lot of object permanence issues. And when you have object permanence issues, putting things away in like drawers where you can't see them is not good, because then you forget they exist. Like genuinely, like I forget things exist. So I wind up having a lot of things all over my surfaces because it's easier for me to know where things are and remember that they exist if they're on the surfaces. But then everything looks really cluttered and terrible, so. But what happened was, first I started getting into roller skating, and that started helping my mental health a lot. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, I feel like my mental health has improved enough. I want to start focusing more on content creation and making more educational appliance care and maintenance content, because I do genuinely want to make that content. It's just sometimes difficult for me because it's work. And my brain doesn't always play nice with work, whether I want to do it or not. It's more super fun ADHD. So I got to the point where I was feeling better, and I still couldn't get myself to be productive, and I could not figure out why. And I was like, I want to go live, but I couldn't get myself to go live. And after a while, I figured it out. It was because my room was messy. So it wasn't, I want to go live. It was, I want to go live, but before I can go live, I have to clean my room so that looks nice in the background, and I have to do this and I have to do that, and then it adds all the extra steps. It piles on your head. I get very overwhelmed, and then I get anxious and I shut down. Rinse and repeat. It's great. It's a struggle living in my brain. But I have both the gift and the curse of being an intensely introspective person. I think and overthink my own thoughts like I'm folding origami. Like it's over and it's a lot. So, and I struggle with being productive, and I struggle with all of these things, but being introspective has allowed me to kind of step outside of myself and look in on what was causing the problem, and then eventually kind of figure it out. And, it took me some time, but I cleaned the room. I felt way better. I was doing way better today until I started worrying about my family living in Tampa during the hurricane. But aside from that, I'm doing a heck of a lot better. It's been a struggle to get here, and I've been wanting to talk to y'all about it for a very long time, because anytime that I talk about my mental health, there's never, not at least one person that's just like, thank you for talking about this, I can relate. I already saw that some of you guys said that you understand. It's a legitimate worry. It's not just anxiety. Oh, I know. It's unfortunately a legitimate worry that's triggering the anxiety. That's how that works. One of my favorite things about social media is that people sharing their stories, especially when it comes to mental health, can just open your eyes to so many things and show you that what you're going through might have a reason, and you might be able to do something differently to help. One of the things that really, really helped me, there was a random TikTok that came up one day. I do not even remember who it was that posted it because I didn't save it. But it was this man talking about how he was on an airplane, and like when he's getting off the airplane, he has to make sure that he stands up at the right time, and he doesn't want to get in anybody else's way because he wants to make sure that nobody gets mad at him, and like all of these tiny little things that he's worrying about. And he realized that that was anxiety, like that it's not normal to worry about all of those itty bitty little things, like from start to finish. And I knew that I had anxiety. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder when I was a teenager, but hearing it put that way and realizing just how often I worry about the stupidest little shit just like blew my mind. And also hearing the word rumination when it comes to mental health, whether it's for anger or sadness or anxiety or worry, but like learning what rumination was and realizing how often I just like would soak in rumination over the stupidest shit that doesn't even matter anymore, and just like realizing that is like the only thing that helped me become more aware of when I was doing it, and becoming more aware of when I'm doing that just helped me kind of be like, okay, this is rumination and we need to get out of it. And like that's how I like the introspection helps. It helps sometimes. Being introspective is both a gift and a curse. It's always the small things you sweat over, yes. When the click happens, there's such a relief to know that there's a name for how we feel. Yes. For as creative a person as I am, I have a very logical and analytical brain. That's I think why I'm good at appliance repair and why I enjoy problem solving. But yeah, for as creative as I am, I'm very logically brain person, very analytical, which is also a blessing and a curse, because then I go through every possible scenario of how things can go wrong. That's just how the logical and analytical brain meshes with the anxiety and mental health struggles brain. It's great. Your brain works that way too. Yeah. It's also such a struggle too, because like when I meet people whose brains don't work that way, or who can't follow simple logic, it frustrates me a lot. I try so hard, but it frustrates me so much. What does it mean if your washing machine smells like corn? It's corn. I don't know. That's a new one, friend. I have never heard of a washing machine smelling like corn. It's got the juice. Did you wash corn? Maybe there's corn stuck somewhere. I mean, like, if there's any weird kind of smells, my big go-tos are, like, first of all, make sure you're keeping it clean. And second of all, make sure that it's installed correctly. Because the drain hose for a washing machine usually goes into a standpipe. It depends on your installation. You know, obviously some places do different things, but correct installation is your drain hose should be going into a standpipe that is not too low down. Like if you look up the installation manual for your model of washing machine, you can see the exact specifics of how to install it. But more or less the idea is that you want the drain hose from the washing machine to be going into the plumbing, and you don't want it to be too far down into the plumbing because then it can go down into the trap. If it goes down into the trap, which is like where there's water sitting in like the U-bend in the plumbing, when your washer goes into a spin, it can actually start to suck water back into the machine because it spins that fast. So you want to have a siphon break somewhere, so you don't want the drain hose too far down into your plumbing for that reason. I've never heard of that smelling like corn. Usually it just smells like shit. But, maybe what smells like corn to you smells like something else to someone else. Don't put corn in the clothes washer and don't put potatoes in the dishwasher. Yeah, we ran 3 cleaning cycles before it went away. It was wow. How far down should it be? It kind of depends on how far down your plumbing goes, but I want to say usually I would try to zip tie it at least 3 to 6 inches down. And like theoretically your standpipe should go further down than that, but you know, 3 to 6 inches, if it's zip tied in place, it's not going to go anywhere. That's going to be far enough down to where it's not going to, you know, hit in the wrong spot. I'd say honestly closer to 6 inches. Again, it depends on the standpipe. My top load washer dances across the floor. It never used to do this and it does it every time now. First thing you want to check is to make sure it's level. So like if you press on the corners of it, like the top corners, like front left, front right, rear left, rear right, when you're standing in front of it, try to like wobble it from side to side. Do that on the diagonals too, just to see if there's like one foot that is like a little bit higher than the rest. Sometimes just from like vibration in general, one of the legs will, like, that might not have been, even if it was like this much shorter than the rest of them, that's enough to where the vibration could essentially make it want to like wiggle its way back up, and it'll kind of, the foot will screw back in a little bit and it will make it out of balance. So first of all, just make sure that that's good. Assuming that's good, next thing I would want to check would be the floor that it's on. So if it's on like a second floor in like a house or something like that that has wooden floors or something, basically if the washing machine is shaking and you're standing in front of it, you can usually feel in the floor, like through your feet, if the floor has a lot of give. If the floorboards is starting to wear out, if it's an older house or something like that, that can make it happen too. So that'd be the second thing that I would check, is just to see like what kind of floor it's on. Ideally, you want to be on as flat a floor as possible. You don't want it on risers. You don't want it on anything like that. You can feel it. The house is 130 years. That may just be the reason then, unfortunately, because like the vibration can make a difference over time. But just make sure that the washing machine is as level as it can be. Ideally, they like to have washing machines installed in like cement basements, like as low as you can go to the ground, because that absorbs all vibration. Like your concrete basement floor, you're never going to feel the vibration across the room from the washing machine when it's spinning. Like it's not going to take that vibration that far. Versus you go 1 floor up and then 2 floors up, it vibrates a lot more than you would think, especially if it's in an older house. Make sure it's level, make sure it's not on any pedestals or anything like that, especially not homemade ones. Homemade ones are usually one of the biggest culprits for making a machine shake. And then just make sure that you are loading it correctly and using the right amount of detergent. So in terms of loading it, you don't want to load it more than like 3/4 of the way full, and that's not like squished down, that's like loosely filled. Ideally you want it to be between halfway and 3/4 of the way full in a top load washing machine. Try to keep the same weight fabric together. Lighter fabrics and heavier fabrics are going to dry at different weights. Dry at different rates because they are different weights. Different weights dry at different rates. And what's going to happen too is they're just going to be a lot heavier when they absorb water, or lighter when they absorb water. So if you, for example, have a lot of lighter t-shirts in with heavier jeans, all in the same wash load, there is a higher chance that your machine is going to shake more and go out of balance more often. It's not to say that you can't do that at all. It's just to say that there is a higher chance. Making it harder for the machine to compensate is the general idea. So make sure that you're loading it correctly. Make sure you're not using too much detergent as well, because if you're using too much detergent, what can happen is you can start to get a buildup inside of your machine. If you have a buildup inside of your machine, it adds weight. You wouldn't think so, but it adds a lot more weight than you would think when it starts building up on the insides of the machine where you can't even see it. What's going to happen then is it's going to shake a lot more, especially because it makes it more difficult for it to drain as well if there are a lot of bubbles. So using too much detergent can make a machine shake as well. Make sure that if you have been using too much, that you start using less and you use a washing machine cleaner. You might want to run it through several times back to back to back if you already have a really bad buildup, because sometimes the buildup is that bad and you really need to run several washing machine cleaners through it back to back to back. Past that, after all of that, after checking all of that, this is like the order of operations where, like, when I was a technician, this is the order that I would go in. After I checked the flooring, that the machine is level, I checked that it was installed correctly, I checked to make sure that the customer is using the correct amount of detergent and loading it correctly. If all of that checks out okay, that's when I would start looking at the shock absorbers. So your washing machine, in a top load washing machine, you have a drum and it's usually suspended by what they call dampers, shock absorbers, a lot of different names for them. Basically, it's these 4 long vertical rods in each corner that have springs at the bottom, and they kind of attach into the tub on the bottoms of it, and the tub is suspended. So that's why if you are looking down into a top load washing machine and you press down on the tub, the whole thing bounces and it can wobble, because it's never unless you have a really older machine or a really, really, really cheap machine in terms of a top loader, because the really older styles weren't suspended like that. They had a whole different suspension, and that's even before my time as a tech, I very rarely saw those kinds. But modern day top load washing machines, this is pretty much how they all are. The easiest way to test whether or not your dampers or your suspension rods are good is if you take your hands and you press on each one of the 4 corners. So you just press and release. Ideally, if those springs are still good, if the shock absorbers are still good and they're not worn out, what should happen is when you press down on it, it should spring right back up. And it might do a little bit of, but it shouldn't do it for very long. So here's the difference, right? If it's working correctly, when you press down on it, it should go boop. If it's old and it's worn out, it'll usually go. It kind of sways. Yeah, or if they make noises as well. If one of the corners is creaky or something like that. If even one of those 4 shock absorbers does that, you need to replace all 4, because that's something that you always replace all 4 at the same time so that they have even wear. That's the long and short of what I would start with a top load washing machine that is shaking a lot. Every single one of those scenarios that I described is something I've run into at some point or another. Those are great tips. Thanks. Happy to help. How goes the manual collection the last mail time? Oh yeah. Somebody sent me a bunch of manuals. Do I know about propane stoves? Nah. I didn't run into a whole lot of them. I know a little bit. It depends on what you want to know. But I'm always honest about my strong and weak areas when it comes to appliances. That's one of my slightly weaker areas. I have a new washer that spins for upwards of 12 minutes. It can be. Depends on what kind of load you're putting in there. We got a Roomba manual. Vacuum cleaning robot. Why does this look like it's from the 50s? Look at this family. What does 5E mean? Google. I'm Googling this to show you how easy this is. Samsung washer 5E error. It means that your washer is having draining issues. You too can pop into a Google search and say Samsung washer 5E error. Error codes are just a starting point though. An error code will tell you the problem that the washer is experiencing, but not necessarily the cause. If it's not draining properly, yes, definitely check the filter. That's always the first thing you want to do is check the filter. Check to make sure you're not using too much detergent. Check to make sure the drain pump is even making a noise. Because if it's not making a noise whatsoever, It may be that something caused the drain pump to burn out, but at that point the drain pump would be burned out. But that's the point that you would call a technician. So, you know, first you want to, what is this for? Is this the key to your fridge? Yeah, I think I have the key to this person's chest freezer that they probably no longer have. That's so funny. I'm looking through the big old folder of manuals that a very nice person named Deanna sent to me. This is the Frigidaire use and care manual for either a chest freezer or an upright freezer. One or the other, I'm assuming. But it had the key inside of it. Like, it looks old. It doesn't look like it's something that they would still have. And even if they did, who cares? I'm not going to, like, go to their house and use the key to unlock their old freezer. But I do think it's funny that I have the key now. And that is staying in this bag forever. It's staying with it. Had propane stove installed, and it really smells. It looks like the flame is very high. Propane stoves don't exist. They are all initially set up for natural gas, and they have to be converted for propane. So if the flame is really high and it smells bad, that has probably not been converted properly. So whoever installed it is responsible to convert it properly. They'll have a conversion kit depending on like the brand and the model or whatever. So like it either comes with it or it's an accessory depending on the brand. But yeah, you gotta have it converted first. It's not gonna like explode your house or anything, but it can definitely, no, it's not safe to run it that way overall. It's like a little bit of a fire hazard just because the flame is so high. I've had customers who were using ranges that were unconverted for months before finally calling for service. And the call usually was something just like, yeah, so my oven has like a lot of black soot buildup on the inside of it. And the flames have always seemed really high. It's like, why didn't you call sooner? But yeah, that's probably why. It's amazing, honestly, some of the things that people just like let slide and they're like, nah, I'm sure it's fine. What's the difference between cold and tap cold on a washer? Cold is going to add a little bit of hot water into it to get the correct temperature, whereas tap cold only pulls from the cold side. So it's at the mercy of whatever the temperature is in your pipes. And like sometimes if you live in New England, for example, in the winter, the tap cold water coming out of your pipes is way too cold for detergent to break down properly. So you don't want to use tap cold unless you have a garment that specifically calls for tap cold, like on the tag. So like if you have a fancy blouse or something, I don't know. I don't wash fancy blouses. I wear Jason Mraz t-shirts. But if you did have a fancy blouse and it said that you were only supposed to wash it in tap cold on the tag or something like that, then yeah, use tap cold in that case. But in most cases, you don't want to use tap cold. This is the fanciest Jason Mraz tee ever. Yeah, the mystical, magical, rhythmical, radical tour. Ride tour. I forgot the word ride. It's a lot of words. The back's pretty too. I went to that show in July. It was July 5th. And Ripe, who is one of my favorite bands, opened for Jason Mraz, who has been one of my more favorite, not as favorite as Ripe, but one of my more favorite recording artists since I've been in like middle school. Is it worth the effort to replace the ring on a front load washer or just buy a new one? When you say the ring, are you just talking about like the ring that holds the gasket in place? The whole thing? You mean the gasket? The big rubber ring, that would be the door gasket. Don't do it yourself. It can be affordable. You want to ask about, some brands do call it the bellows. It can be called either the gasket, the bellows, what's the other term? There's like 5 different terms and it just depends on the brand. They're all the same thing. I say gasket because people know what a gasket is. You say bellows and people are like, the what? And then you have to say the gasket. So I just say the gasket. But so the door gasket, the bellows does sound ominous. But so the door gasket, it can be affordable. I would call an appliance repair company and ask them for a quote for replacing the door gasket. I'm assuming it's just like torn or something like that, but it's not something that you want to DIY fix, because if you don't know what you're doing and you don't put it on correctly, it can very easily and very quickly, the very first time you use it, flood the room that it's in. And I know that from experience, because when I was a brand new baby tech out in the fields, I did it once in a customer's house. Once. I did it once. Never again. But yeah, if you don't know how to replace it if you've never done it before. They're not always easy. Some of them are easy. They're not always easy. But yeah, I would just call for a quote, because depending on the brand, I can't tell you how much that's going to cost. It depends on the area that you're in. It depends on the company that you call. It depends on the brand of appliance, and it depends on where the appliance company is getting their parts. Those can all affect the price. And, you know, like availability and all that other stuff, I have no idea. But there have been scenarios in which that has been an affordable repair, and there are scenarios in which it has not. It can go either way. So that's why I'm just saying, if you call, and don't do a YouTube video, don't listen to Alan. You want to know why? Because every single brand is different. Not only that, sometimes it's different from model to model. And not only that, sometimes it's different from like model version A to model version B. And if you find a YouTube video that's for model version A, but you have model version B, sometimes if you follow those directions, it can still f you up. The advice that I give is, you know, a little bit generic, because I'm saying do your own research, but I can at least tell you the direction in which to go. And that specific repair is not one that you want to risk, because if you think about it this way, like any kind of repair that you are about to perform, I want you to think of the following. What is the worst case scenario if this repair goes wrong? Worst case scenario for a gasket for that going wrong is flooding your house. Flood damage is expensive, friend. So that's why that specific repair, it's not as simple as follow a YouTube tutorial. I have specialized tools, I still own these tools, specialized tools for LG gaskets, because they have specific tools that you have to use. Those spring rings holding in the gasket are a bitch to get off and to put back on. They suck. Electrolux, it's basically one big spring. There's a trick for it. Just those two brands, just those two examples, that's my best example. They're two completely different things, two completely different parts, even though they both serve the same purpose and they're called the same thing. They're two totally different things. And if you don't know what you're doing, you will do what I did, and you will flood the customers or your house. So learn from my mistakes. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to sit here and be your mom and say, don't do that. I'm trying to say, I did the bad thing. Don't do the bad thing I did. It's still a pain in the ass. My dryer is squeaking. Call an appliance repair tech. That needs to be looked at immediately. Squeaking on a dryer is not something that you want to mess with. There are several different things that it can be. Usually it's going to be one or multiple of the rollers, or it's going to be the pulley making those noises. But either way, if you leave that unchecked, what's going to happen is eventually they're going to burn themselves out completely and your dryer is going to stop tumbling. Sometimes that happens in a matter of months. Sometimes that happens in a matter of years, but you never know when it's going to happen. So it's better to address it sooner rather than later, especially because when you start to hear a squeak, you don't know if it's going to be one part or multiple. And the longer you let it go, the more parts are going to be affected. The laundry leak, how's that going? It's going. From what I gather, it seems like they tend to do all of their like events and things more towards the beginning of the year. So we're just kind of like in off season, I suppose. I do have another Cascade video coming out all about what cycles on your dishwasher mean what different things. Honestly, I really like it. You were asked today if you have ever used scent boosters. No, Renee said, what did I say? No, it causes wax buildup. So it's not that you can't use them at all. I don't think there's ever been a point in time where I said don't use them ever. But they definitely can cause a buildup if you're not taking care of your machine properly. So, like, if you want to use them, you can, but you need to make sure that you use them, number one, in moderation, because some people go so overboard with the scent boosters. Number two, just make sure that you're keeping up with cleaning your machine, because a lot of times people will get buildups because they'll use the scent boosters, but they never clean their machine. So it's like you have to make sure that you're using everything the right way. If you're going to use them, make sure to follow directions. Most times when people have an issue, it's because they don't follow directions, and a lot of people don't follow directions. Changed my own belt in my Samsung dryer because of you. Nice. Oh, there's my kitty. My floor's clean. I can show you my cat. Hello, you look like you just woke up. Yeah, you sleepy? You come say hi? No? Yeah. There we go. This is Adama. His full name is Admiral Adama, the Battlestar Galacticat. My hair is amazing. Thank you. My hair is super faded out. I have not re-dyed it since I last bleached my roots. It's been a bit. Hi, baby. The running joke is I never baby talk babies, but I always baby talk my cat. He's glaring at me like, it is food time. It's not. You have 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Hi, baby. Hey. Come say hi. He's like, no, feed me. He's like, I'm irritated, but I love you. Now feed me. I'll put you down. He's also very polite. Like, he's never intentionally clawed me or bitten me to, like, hurt me. It's only ever in play. And even if I'm, like, holding him and, like, he doesn't want to be held, I can tell he doesn't want to be held. Like, he feels tense, and you can tell he's looking for, like, a place to jump down. But he'll tolerate it for a minute, and when he goes to jump out of my arms, he does it very gently. I got very lucky with my very sweet kitty cat. Even if he does beg for food all the time. He's very food obsessed. You have to use child-proof locks. Oh yes, okay, first of all, in the last apartment I lived in, it was a studio apartment that I lived in with my ex. And that apartment was too small to really do very much with what we had. So we did have child locks on all the cabinets because there was one time that we came home and he had knocked a bottle of olive oil on the floor. All over the floor. So from then on, we kept all the cabinets locked. Okay, so for background, my cat, we adopted him at 1 year old. For the first year of his life, he was an indoor-outdoor cat who, he was not adopted. He adopted the family that he lived with, who was a couple that I went to high school with. They were living in Brooklyn at the time. They had 7 indoor-outdoor cats in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, and they also had a cat door. My cat, they think he used to be a shop cat. They're not really sure. Got in through the cat door and just hung around and stayed there. And then the 2 of them needed to move. They were moving down to Florida, actually. They needed to rehome some of the cats. So that's how I got my cat. So he was an indoor-outdoor cat, and then when I adopted him, he was an indoor-only kitty. He's not going outside anymore. He was not happy about that for like the first few months. At like 4 in the morning, he would yell at the door to go out. That was fun. Eventually, he got the idea that he wasn't going to go out. And then he also would dig through the garbage, so we had to get like locking trash cans and stuff. And he figured out how to get in every one of them. For a couple of years, what we wound up doing when we moved into this apartment, he didn't wind up needing the cabinet locks here, started feeding him outside of the kitchen, and he's not allowed in the kitchen. So, like, he gets reprimanded if he's in the kitchen, get him out of the kitchen. What we eventually wound up doing was we have a half bath that's near the kitchen downstairs, and we put the trash can in the half bath and kept the door closed at all times. That was the only way to keep him out of the garbage. Eventually, after like a year of doing that, a year or 2 of doing that, he got better about not being in the kitchen. Like, now he avoids the kitchen. He does not go inside of the kitchen whatsoever. He knows that he's not allowed to be there. So eventually we trained that into him. And then eventually we took the garbage can out of the half bath, and it has been in our kitchen ever since. And finally he settled down in his old age and doesn't dig through the garbage anymore, but he is still so food obsessed that I have to keep his food in like one of those giant like locking containers. Otherwise he will get into the bag. Like if he sees the empty bag in the garbage, he will dig to get it. He's so food driven. Will you be on Twitch again soon? I don't know. At this point, I'm trying not to set goals for myself because I'm trying to be gentle with myself in coming back to being more present on social media. My mental health was not doing great when I stopped going live pretty much altogether, like 6 months ago or something like that. So I was just kind of focusing on getting my brain back to a good place, and now I'm trying to ease back into going live more often and creating more content and like better content and stuff like that. That's what I'm working towards. It's just approaching it as one day at a time, because this is like when I was still in the field working as an appliance repair tech, I was hitting a burnout wall really hard, and I realized it towards the end, and that was part of the reason why I wound up quitting. And I also got very lucky that I was financially able to make the switch. And like I have friends that still work for that same company that I used to work for, and I talked to one of them recently, and I'm real glad I quit when I did. It would not have gotten better. But coming back from burnout, like I didn't realize just how deeply I had gotten into severe burnout until I quit my day job basically and finally was able to breathe. And even then it's not like an immediate, oh, well, I quit the day job, let's hit the ground running on content creation. Like I learned the hard way that I needed to take more of a break than I realized, especially with the trips that I took earlier this year. I struggled so hard with my anxiety. Like, I've done so much this year that I never, ever would have been able to do if I had the old day job of appliance repair. I went to South by Southwest for the launch of a new Tide product. Like, what? Like, I'm in the Laundry League. I went to North Carolina to the Electrolux headquarters. That was so cool. Like, and I learned such valuable just appliance stuff in general from all of that. I've had such amazing opportunities. Next week, I'm gonna go see Zach for the Laundry Book launch party. So that'll be fun. But at the beginning of the year, it was like South by Southwest and going to Electrolux and just like traveling in general, traveling solo. I wasn't ready, honestly. I don't think I was ready to do all of that. And traveling is still something that, like, I love traveling. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. But when you go into like a burnout hole of just isolating and not being around people, and all of a sudden you're at South by Southwest, a lot of people. I don't know that I was ready to do that, but I did it. But I feel like I'm in a lot better of a headspace now, and I have grown a lot since then. Having mental health issues and internet friends who basically exist only on the other side of the screen is very difficult, because I go into long periods of time where I can't talk to other people, and it's difficult for me to respond to other people. And then, I don't know, it's like eventually the friendships fizzle out, you know? And I know that like that can be on me too, but it's hard. It's different if it's somebody that like you're seeing in person all the time, but like when you exist on the other side of the screen, sometimes people interpret that as like me not wanting to talk to them, or me thinking poorly of them, and then they don't want to talk to me anymore because of that, and that's not what it is. Talking to people is just hard sometimes. I'm just glad that like I'm finally getting to the place where I am recognizing that and can talk about it. And on that note, I have to feed my cat. But yeah, long story short, this is here's the summary. If you missed the beginning of this live or anything like that, here's the summary. I was gone for a while because my mental health wasn't good. Roller skating brought me joy. Then I realized how isolated I was, and I needed to start like talking to more people. So now I'm working on that, and I'm also working on getting better at making more content. We're getting there. That's it. That's the live. All right, I'm gonna go feed my cat now.